Hi everyone, my name is Azrika and I want to welcome you to my channel. If this is your first time, you can go and check out some of the other videos, some of the things we've talked about. And today we're actually going to be talking about success and failure and how failure sometimes is the greatest element or the greatest piece to our success. So let's get right into it. So I originally thought about this just as I was considering certain elements in my life, certain disappointments I've experienced, and I think it's one thing when, and we've mentioned this in a video before, when like you get to a point in life where you're disappointed or you've been hurt or something just fell apart, but you got there because of a series of bad decisions. Like I think that's one thing, and with that comes God's unending grace and his ability to take everything and just make it something beautiful. But what about those times in life where the disappointment, the failure, the letdown comes after you've given your very best? You've done everything you possibly can. And I've actually just been thinking about like how the Bible speaks about that experience. And the story that just kept coming to my mind was that of Joseph. So the story goes like this. So Jacob was technically promised like the birthright by God, or like the inheritance by God. But instead of being patient, he went about getting it on his own time, in his own way, which tends to be tragic, via the help of his sketchy mom. And as a result, actually, he never saw his mom alive again. So Jacob had to flee because Esau was so pissed and intended to take his life. He had to work in Laban's house, but there he found the love of his life, Rachel, who he thought was absolutely beautiful. But Rachel had a sister. The Bible called her tender-eyed. In Jamaica, we call it look-a-bush, where like one eye is looking at you, the other is looking at the bush over there. So she wasn't as aesthetically pleasing, but deceit just seems to run in this family. So Laban tricked Jacob into lying with Leah, and as a result, Leah ended up becoming his wife. He's so in love with Rachel that he's willing to work another 7 years on top of the 7 years that he was initially working to have Rachel as his wife. Gets Rachel is barren, Leah is popping out like all these babies left and right, and eventually Rachel, the woman that Jacob actually loved, does have a child, and that child is Joseph. So Jacob loved Joseph and was unapologetic about it. He showed him favoritism in every sense of the word, and even to the point where Joseph had like a coat of many colors. As a result of Jacob's like favoritism, which I don't know why he didn't learn that favoritism is harmful from his own upbringing, but whatever. As a result of Jacob's like favoritism, the brothers of Joseph hate him. They hate him so much. But Jacob is almost like oblivious to that and still just loves this child who is born of the woman that he actually loved. It's just really a sad story when you think about it. But anyways, Jacob treated Joseph specially. Like Joseph was trained academically. He didn't have to like work in the field like the rest of his brothers. And one day it gets to the point where his brothers hate him so much they want to take his life. And this comes after a series of dreams where, it starts with like sheaves of wheat bowing down to Joseph, or bowing down to his his wheat stack or whatever, and then the stars doing the same. And so his brothers are so pissed. They're like, who do you think you are? That they surmise in their soul that they're going to take his life. And I've heard people call Joseph a brat, and he kind of deserved this. And let me put a pause in that. That's literally stupid. It's like victim shaming. You don't shame the victim. Joseph could have been the king of brats. No one deserves to be sold into slavery, to be hated so much that your sibling they want to kill you. Rule number one, you don't shame the victim. So anywho, instead of killing him, Reuben, the oldest brother, has it in his heart that he's going to kind of take him back to his father. So they throw him in a pit. And he goes off, but the brothers, while he's away, just for a brief moment, not even for more than a day, I'm guessing, they see some slave traders and they decide to sell Joseph to slavery. Though Reuben comes back, he's like, what the heck, bro? Why did you guys sell him? He's all distraught, and well, it is what it is. Joseph is sold and he will not be returning home. So in my mind, I'm just like, surely God couldn't have had this dude sold into slavery. But then I stopped and thought about it. God, first of all, was the one that gave him that dream. The dreams of the wheat bowing down and the stars bowing down. Joseph was now at the point where his family members hated him so much that they wanted him dead. In order to protect the dream that God had given Joseph, the dream that he placed on his heart, God literally had to separate him from that environment, because now murder was on the table, even though they convinced themselves not to do it at that point. Who knows if years down the line, they would have hated him even more, because I'm guessing Jacob wasn't going to stop showing him favoritism. He was just going to continue doing it. So murder was on the table, and to protect the purpose, God had to separate him. So in my mind, I was like, now this kind of had to be divine, because what made the slave traders come just at the moment, like at the climax of this conflict? Although this is like a sketchy thing, slavery that seemed ordained, God literally said that slavery was a safer option for Joseph than living at home. So sometimes those things that we're separated from, those things that we lose, those things that like seem to like slip through our grasp, it may be for the preservation of our purpose. Because a dead Joseph could not fulfill the purpose. He could not rescue his family from famine, which would happen years down the line. Fast forward, the Bible pretty much says that God had favor on him. So he ends up going to Potiphar's house. Potiphar is blessed because of Joseph's presence. Everything he touches excels even in his bondage. But then comes another part of the story that I'm like, yo, this is just utterly unfair. Homegirl, Potiphar's wife, is mad thirsty and probably honestly dumb fine. Like, she's probably super fly. So is Joseph, as it turns out. Being a slave gets you ripped. She wants to sleep with him. And Joseph, having the integrity and a relationship with God, says, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. Like, I'm not going to dishonor my best friend Jesus. And what happens? He gets thrown in jail. Once again, Joseph is doing the right thing, or he's not in a place where he's made a decision that should get him the consequence that it does, but it does get him into jail. And it's really stressful for me, because I'm like, that's not fair. He did the right thing. Why does it seem like every time Joseph does the right thing, it ends up backfiring? But then I stop and think about it. And in the jail is where he meets the butler and the baker, which, although it took 2 years, that's the reason that he ever got in the position to become second in command. It seems like he did the right thing and got the wrong consequence, but really God, through just like weird means, was in the process of upgrading Joseph. So again, if it feels like in your life, it's like, man, but I've just followed what I thought you wanted me to do. I've maintained my integrity. I've kept my honor. How am I the one suffering? Potiphar's wife is free. She's chilling. I mean, she probably sucks. Her heart is probably really dark, living a life just of suckery, but that's not a word. But you know, Joseph, again though, when he was in the prison, it said that God had favor on him. And the leaders of the prison didn't really concern themselves with Joseph. So it's not that in the midst of the highs and lows that Joseph kind of just had to tough it out. God ultimately showed him favor wherever he went. But that disappointment, that failure, was the stepping stone to him becoming second in command, because had he never gone to jail and met the butler and the baker or the wine bearer and the baker and interpreted their dreams, years later when Pharaoh needed his dreams interpreted, no one would have known that was a capability that God had gifted him with. So it is in the middle of his oppression, in the middle of that failure, that again his purpose is not only being protected, but being manifested. And ultimately, Joseph ends up becoming second in command and like devising a way to save grain during the years of plenty that ended up being the reason why all of Egypt survived during the 7 years of famine. So it is it's like a seesaw, like it's a bunch of highs and lows. But as I study Joseph's story more and more, and the times I'm so pissed, like I'm inclined to be like, God, this was not fair, I realized that by the end of the story, you see that it was not only fair, but it was very tactical and strategic. And I argue that God is playing a very tactical and strategic role in your life right now, but also something so very loving. Like, favor is still being shown on you in the midst of contending with this disappointment. God has not left you alone. And I'm speaking to you from such a place of utter experience. There are days that I'm like, does God actually care about my happiness? Does he love me? Why the heck am I in this position? Why am I here? Or why have I faced this disappointment in my life, or that disappointment? And I'm just learning to trust, because I think that's the thing that carried Joseph through the many years of bondage, was that he trusted in God's character. There's no easy way to say this. It doesn't always work out in the time period we want it to. And I'm just learning to trust that it will eventually work out. Like your story, this part of your story will make sense. There's something that God ultimately can teach you in this position. There will be times of extreme pain in our lives. There will be disappointments beyond our comprehension. There will be highs, there will be lows. But those feelings of pain and disappointment are not an indicator of God's love for us. So I've just been thinking about this a lot. It's just that the failures have such a weight in our success. I remember reading somewhere, and just like an additional reading, that what Joseph learned in the process of being a slave in Potiphar's house and in the process of being in jail was ultimately what enabled him to be so effective as the second in command. And Joseph's testimony at the end of his life was what the devil meant for evil, God kind of spinned it. He changed that thing. He turned it around. So maybe you don't feel it now, but Joseph in the middle of jail could have questioned, what the heck, God? How are you doing this to me? But I think he instead just held on to the one promise he could hold on to, and that's God's love for him. So trust me when I say, I don't know what this failure is. I don't know what this disappointment, this separation is, but I really am learning to believe that sometimes being quote unquote sold into slavery, not literally, but being separated from what seems like our comfort zone, being pulled away from our home, is really the thing that sets our purpose into motion. And it's not gonna be easy. But I just wanna put it out there that don't fear failure. Because if everything went smoothly, the success you want would be so empty. When you get there, it would be so empty. But because of the highs and lows, the journey of climbing the mountaintop is that much more exquisite. The view is that much more breathtaking because you knew what it took to get there. So cherish, in the weirdest way, cherish this failure, cherish this time of disappointment, this pain, this rejection, this loss of friendship, this loss of relationship, this separation, this isolation. Cherish it in that it is a part and a major and a beautiful and a pivotal part of your success down the line. And I'm claiming that for my life and claiming it for yours. If you're at a point where success, like you've attained the success that you desire, or a situation that really broke you is resolved, I want you to comment below. Did you find that when you gained your success, that the hardship and the difficulty and disappointment made it that much sweeter? Also, if this is something that you like, if this idea really resonates with you, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I love you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Mwah.